Hi everyone, welcome to A Stitch in Time. Today is Friday, July 7th, 2023, and this is episode 260. My name is Carol. I am known as Knits and Pearls on Ravelry, and I live east of Vancouver in the Fraser Valley of British Columbia, Canada, where it is hot and sunny and a little bit smoky today. Despite the fact that there's actually an air quality advisory in place, I really wanted to record outside today, and I did everything I could to make it work, and it didn't. And so here we are back in the craft room. It's a little bit warm, so I have a fan pointed my way. So you may hear that in the background, and hopefully it won't be too distracting. It's been a couple of weeks since we last spoke. I hope you enjoyed your Canada Day and Independence Day celebrations. They took place obviously this past week. We had a very quiet Canada Day here. As you will know if you are a regular viewer, my husband went in for surgery about a week and a half ago and spent most of the rest of the following week at home recuperating. So other than Monday, we didn't venture too far from home, and I'll tell you a little bit about that in a while. I have several finished projects to share with you. Woohoo! A couple works of progress, quite a few acquisitions, and of course a little, chitter chatter about what's been going on in my life in the past couple of weeks. So if that interests you, go in, maybe get yourself something to drink and settle in for a bit of a visit. Before I do talk about my knitting though, I have a couple of winners to announce for the 2 make-alongs that are taking place in the Ravelry group. So the first winner is for the Another Year of Stash chatter thread, which is a year-long chatter thread with prizes awarded monthly. So for June, I chose from posts 770 to 950. Random number generator chose post 872. That is Knits and Reads, who is Susan from Colorado. So thanks for participating, Susan, and congratulations. The second winner is for the May Yarn of the Month Club, which is a monthly make-along. There were 14 finished projects. Random number generator chose number 14, and that was Turtle for Cats, who is Amanda from Texas, who managed to squeak in right under the wire on June 30th with her finished project. So congratulations also to you, Amanda, and thanks for taking part. So both winners will receive up to $20 US in patterns that are giftable on Ravelry. So please send me a private message on Ravelry with the choices of the patterns that you would like to receive, and I will get those to you as soon as possible. So thanks to everyone who has been taking part in the make-alongs all year long. It's never too late to join, so if you think you might be interested, come by the A Stitch in Time podcast Ravelry group. Check out the first post in each of the pertinent threads and jump on in. We'd love to have you there. All right, finished projects. I have 3. First up is a pair of socks. Of course, seem to often have socks, as you know. These are the Feather Vein socks by Helen Stewart of Curious Handmade. These are the second design from the Handmade Sock Society this year. Knit from Sweet Fiber Yarns, Super Sweet Sock in the Electric Daffodil colorway. But I've been thinking about these as my electric Goldfinch socks because I chose this color with the American Goldfinch in mind. They are one of my favorite summer visitors to our bird feeders. So they don't look nearly as bright as they really are. Like, these really are electric yellow. Let me bring them in closer, let you see them in a little more detail. So I knit the medium size, 64 stitch size, has a 1x1 twisted rib, this lace and cable detail that runs down the entire front of the sock, traditional heel flap and gusset, and rounded toe. Honestly, I'm not sure what kind of toe Helen Stewart does. I always just do my favorite one because I know it fits me well. I'm going to spin this sock around a little bit so you can see the lace design from the front. There you go, so you can see these twisted rib cables that run up the front and along each side. I found it interesting that in the front, these cables are set off from the lace with a garter stitch line on either side, or column, I guess. Here, the cables go straight into stockinette stitch, so I don't feel like they're quite as noticeable. But a lovely sock. I think the color shows off the lace really well. And yeah, I'm happy to be finished those. I will say that I kind of pushed myself to get the second one done because I wanted to be finished by the time the third pattern came out, which happened yesterday. So I'll talk a little bit more about that too coming up. So yes, I say electric goldfinch socks, because that's how I've been thinking of them, but they are the feather vein socks by Helen Stewart. I have another pair of socks I actually just finished yesterday. These are my what I'm calling my Cooper's Hawk socks. The pattern is Heel Toe Do-Si Do by Kay Litton, who is the Crazy Sock Lady on YouTube. And she has Crazy Sock Lady Designs, I think, which is all her patterns. I knit these from Fiber Nymph Dye Works Heavenly Base in the Cooper's Hawk colorway. And the Heavenly Base is a merino cashmere nylon base. And the Cooper's Hawk colorway was part of the Backyard Birdwatchers Club 2nd edition from last year. So the yarn came with a full skein of the self-striping, and then had 2 coordinating mini skeins. So this gold one here, and then I used the other kind of a taupey beige for the, or gray beige, kind of grayish, I know that's the word, right? For the toe. I like the way that this Heel Toe Do-Si Do pattern, it's super easy. It's only a 2-row repeat, and it just shows off self-striping yarns really nicely. It just adds a little bit of interest. So it's not difficult to knit, but it just makes it a little bit more interesting than just plain knitting. I did substitute a 2x2 ribbed cuff for, I think, a 1x1 or 1x1 twisted rib. And I just did my own heel and toe. I'm not really sure what the pattern called for. Again, a 64 stitch. I knit both of these on 2mm needles, which is my usual for a fingering weight sock. Once again, I'll just twist the sock around so you can get a look at the pattern from the front. There you go. And then just plain stripes on the back. My thought was to try and get 2 pairs of socks out of this yarn, because I did have I think 140 grams. I'm not sure if the MCN base is 100 grams or not, but I had a full skein and then 2 20-gram minis. So I am thinking about knitting a pair for my husband. He has much longer feet, which means he'll have a shorter cuff. I used I think 67 grams altogether, if memory serves me correctly. So I should have enough to do a pair with maybe a bit shorter cuff, or maybe add another color in, you know, from my sock yarn scraps. to make a longer cuff for him, but that's gonna be in the future because I'm ready to move on to something else, as much as I enjoyed knitting with this colorway. So yeah, again, I'll bring that in a little bit closer. And really happy with how those turned out. This is my third and final finished project. This is Etta by Allison Green. It is a sweater designed for Barocco using their Summer Sesame yarn, which is a worsted weight cotton, acrylic, and nylon blend. So I saw this sweater knit up as a sample in my local yarn shop and decided I wanted one for myself. So I did choose a different colorway than the sample was knit in. This is the Garden colorway, which is number 5261 and features kind of an apple green, a couple different shades of purple, and a little bit of rose. Colors that are definitely in my wheelhouse. I knit the second size, which gives you a finished measurement of 36.5 inches at the bust. The pattern does recommend 2 to 4 inches of positive ease, but I prefer my sweaters a little bit more fitted, and I think it turned out to be just the right size, not too loose, not too tight, just the right amount of ease, and it does have a really nice drape to it. The pattern features top-down construction with a circular yoke and also has some waist shaping written in. So I knit the sweater more or less as written. I just made a couple of small modifications. I began the waist shaping I began the hip shaping about an inch later than the pattern instructed, and also added about an inch to the overall length, and that was just to fit my long torso. I also moved the waist shaping in on the back. The pattern has you placing your increases and decreases a quarter of the way in from each side on both the front and back. I moved my shaping on the back into a third of the way in from each side. And that's just mimicking a technique that I learned from Amy Herzog's program. Can't remember the name of her book or program. I'll put it down here. But I've been doing it that way now for years after learning that technique from her. It just fits my body type. If I do waist shaping along the side, I sometimes end up with kind of a flared out result, and I'd rather have it fit like this does. I'm going to come in a little bit closer, show you that lace detail and the yarn up close, and then I'm going to take this off because it is a little warm for today. So there you can see all the eyelets, and then the yoke increases are built into this patterning, and then you see all the fun striping that's taking place with the yarn. Once you separate for the body and sleeves, you just add a little garter stitch cuff on each sleeve, and the hem also features a garter stitch hem. I've just thrown this on over my dress and actually doesn't look too badly. I'll most likely wear this with some capris or a pair of jeans, or even a pair of shorts. I think it is a great simple tee for spring and fall and all but the hottest of summer days. So there you go, Etta by Allison Green. The store sample that I saw was knit in the smallest size, and it only called for 2 balls of this yarn. That was one of the things that initially attracted me to this project. I thought, wow, to get a whole top out of 2 balls would be fantastic. Unfortunately, my size called for 3 balls, but as it turned out, I only used 206 grams to knit this entire sweater. And so what I'm thinking about doing is going back to the yarn shop and seeing if there is a colorway that incorporates one or more of these colors in it. And then buying 2 more balls of yarn, knitting the neck bands and the sleeve and bottom hems out of the leftovers from this sweater, and then making the rest of the sweater from, you know, 2 new balls of yarn in a different colorway. So that may happen. It would be kind of nice to get 2 sweaters out of 5 balls instead of 1 sweater out of just over 2. Got to sort of debate whether it's worth it or not. I can also see myself making this sweater in a wool or wool blend yarn, using and putting long sleeves, making it more suitable for fall and winter. I just enjoyed knitting this pattern so much, and I just really like the way it fits. Cool story, one of the viewers left a comment to say that she and her sister lost a dear friend who was an acquaintance of Etta James, the singer, and had introduced her to them, and that she was going to knit this sweater for her sister as a gift. And I just thought that was such a very thoughtful gift and such a neat story. So I hope you enjoy making yours as much as I have enjoyed making mine, and I hope your sister loves it. I'm sure she will, with all that meaning attached especially. Okay, it is time to move on to works in progress. I only have 2 at the moment to share with you, and only one is probably going to remain a whip. First up is my July Yarn of the Month Club project. So I am knitting it from this yarn. It is a gift from a knitting friend. It is from Zen Yarn Garden. It's the super fine fingering, which is a 90% super fine superwash merino, 10% nylon. And that's 400 yards. And it is in the mountains and lake colorway. So this is part of the Art Walk series, and the colorway is based on that painting by Lauren Harris. So I'm not sure how well the light is picking it up, but this skein is so beautiful. It has a couple of different shades of blue. One is kind of a bright blue, and then there's also kind of a tealy blue. And then it's got black, gray, and kind of almost a dark spruce green in places. It's been really fun to knit up and see all the colors come across my needles. So a while ago, I had seen this pattern by Alina Apasova, and I thought it would be perfect. It's called Lakes and Rivers, and it is a crescent-shaped shawl. So it features these lakes and these rivers, and then these lines on either side are the banks. And then it finishes up with a garter stitch border. So I am calling this project Mountains, Lakes, and Rivers, a combination of the name of the pattern and the yarn. And I'm using, with this yarn, I am using Stroll fingering in the Dove Gray Heather, or Dove Heather? Just Dove Heather colorway. They go together just perfectly. And coincidentally, I didn't realize this when I paired them up. This exactly the same yarn was used for the lighter colors in this shawl too, in the sample. So I would say I am probably a third to 40% of the way finished already. It's a very easy pattern to knit. Once you understand how these lakes are made, you don't have to look at the pattern again. And most of it is just garter stitch stripes. And then you do the lakes every 8th row, I guess it is, or 7th row, 8th row. Anyway, it's only every so often, and you purl those back. So a very simple pattern to knit, very enjoyable. As I say, just watching the different colors come up across your needles. I love how it's turning out so far. I just love the movement in this pattern, in this design, in this fabric. And I think it's just gonna look amazing once it's all blocked out. So very, 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 very enjoyable knit so far. Just loving it. And again, my lighting's probably not the best, but you can see, hopefully see the different colors in there. Yeah, so super fun. My other work in progress is also a really fun project, but unfortunately, after I show it to you, it's going to hit the frog pond. It's a wonderful pattern. It's a beautiful yarn. I just don't love them together, and I've been second guessing my yarn choice right from the beginning. And then last night I was working on this project and came to the decision that I could do better. And so after I show this to you, this project will be no more. So not that long ago, one of the winners for one of the make-alongs chose a sock pattern by Nancy Wheeler called Tits Up. Hope you're not offended by the language, but that's the name of the pattern. And it is Nancy's homage to The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which is a TV series on Amazon Prime. And both my husband and I really enjoyed watching that series, and were sad when it came to an end this past spring. So when I saw that sock pattern, I knew I had to knit it. As an aside, Nancy is, she also has a podcast, Knit Sip Happy. She lives in Moncton, New Brunswick, which is on the east coast of Canada. I'm on the west coast. And she and her husband run a craft winery. So Nancy's often sipping on a glass of wine while she's recording. She's also an up-and-coming sock designer, and recently one of her designs was chosen to be in the new 52 Weeks of Socks book. So congratulations on that, Nancy. That's just amazing accomplishment. Anyway, so I saw a sock set online that I thought would be really great for this project. And then I realized I had something similar in my stash, and I should really shop from my stash. And so I pulled out this skein. This is, I've probably had this, well, I'm sure more than a decade. It's Deep Deep Stash from Pigeon Roof Studios. I don't even know if they're dyeing anymore. It's an 80-10-10 superwash merino cashmere nylon base in the Bitten colorway. And it's got these different shades of pink with this dark chocolate brown. And then I went looking in my sock yarn scraps, and I found this leftover bit of handmaiden Casbah, which is an 81% merino, 9% cashmere, and 10% nylon base. And this is the ebony colorway. You think ebony is black, but this is actually a really, really deep brown. So I thought this would be perfect. Unfortunately, this yarn is a bit too busy for this design, and it overshadows the design feature. And so it's just not quite right. And I'm already like halfway down the foot. So let's be clear. Love the yarn. Like, look how beautifully it's knitting up. Not a lot of pooling. Gorgeous colors. It works with this dark brown so well. But it just obscures this little cable pattern. So I'm going to slip this on a sock blocker. I kept telling myself, oh, if it's stretched on over your foot or sock blocker, that'll make all the difference. But you know, I just don't think it does. So if you look closely, you can see that there are these little cable details, little circles here. Can you guess what they represent? There's a pair for Midge, who is the marvelous Mrs. Maisel, and a pair for her manager, Susie. And when Midge is a stand-up comic back in the late 50s, early 60s, and before she goes on stage, Susie will say to her, tits up, and that means put your shoulders back, go out, be proud. I always think of it kind of as girl power, because of course at that time there were very few female comedians, and so that's just their, not anthem, but slogan, I guess might be the right word. Anyway, I thought that was just such a fun idea. But yeah, it's just, this yarn just obscures that pattern too much, and I'm gonna cast it on again sometime in the future with a different yarn, and I think I may have received the perfect yarn in the mail this week. So you may be seeing it sooner rather than later. Anyway, say goodbye to this version. This yarn will be back because I just love it. I sort of contemplated just keeping this cuff and starting over, but I think I'd prefer a 2x2 cuff. So I might do something similar, or do the whole cuff in that yarn. Haven't decided yet. I've got lots to play with, but I will be using this yarn again. Okay, let me see. Oh yes, up and coming. So, let me think for a minute. I think what I'll show you first is my sixth, wait, that's a tough word, sixth skein from my personal sock yarn club. So if you've been watching for a while, at the beginning of the year I put away 12 skeins of sock yarn, had my husband put them into paper bags, label them 1 through 12, and every time I finish one, I open a new bag. So this was yarn number 5, and obviously I have finished these socks. So it was time to open bag number 6, and often I'll do that sort of live while I'm recording. But I decided to go ahead and look because I thought that this yarn might be suitable for the next Helen Stewart Handmade Sock Society pattern. So let me show you the yarn first. It is another skein from Sweet Fiber. Once again, it's the Super Sweet Sock, which is an 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon fingering weight base, and this is the apple picking colorway. This was part of the fall 2022 Sock Yarn Club. So it's this beautiful warm shade of red. There's the label if you're interested. I thought maybe I could use this yarn for the Seed Pod Socks, which is a pattern that was released yesterday by Helen Stewart, and it is sock number 3 in this year's Handmade Sock Society. I'll put a picture there. You can see it's just has a detailed cuff, and then it's just plain knitting the rest of the way. And I do think that this yarn would show off that stitch pattern really nicely. I Googled images of seed pods, and sure enough, there are red seed pods out there. I know it's not necessary, but I really like when there's an actual theme or object that's being, that the design is inspired by. I like to try and coordinate my yarn and the pattern itself. I do have some other yarns in my stash that I am considering for the seed pod socks. But at the same time, I tried to find a pattern that really spoke to me for this yarn, and nothing really came up. So I decided, well, this is inspired by apples, but it is a fall club, and seed pods, you see a lot of those in the fall. Like, it all kind of, to me, blended, even because I was trying to think if there were apple patterns. I mean, this is how silly it gets sometimes for me, is I feel like I have to always match up the name of the yarn with the pattern, and I don't. But I do think that this yarn would look very nice knit up in the seed pod pattern. So I am strongly leaning towards that, especially because no other pattern is catching my eye for this yarn. So stay tuned, you'll know next time I record. All right, that is it for all the knitting content. Now it's on to acquisitions. I had a couple of shipments arrive here since I last spoke to you, and I also received a really lovely gift from my son. First, with the yarn that I purchased. So I don't remember exactly what took me to this website. I suspect it was watching Knit Sit Happy, Nancy's podcast. This is a shop that she references frequently called La Violette. And my guess is she mentioned a yarn, and I probably went on the website to look at it and started browsing, as you do. And I came across this fade set from Lily and Pine. Lily and Pine is a Canadian yarn dyer, I believe in Alberta. This is the Daylily Sock base, which is 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon. And it caught my eye because I'm drawn to gold yarns, but I don't really have the complexion to wear it around my face. And I thought this would be perfect, because if I did a sweater that faded, this color would be next to my face, and the gold would be on the bottom. And so I ordered this with a particular sweater in mind, and that is, oh, did I write it down? Yeah, Spectre by Joji Locatelli. The only thing is that when I got it and took a closer look, I realized that I wasn't going to have enough with just 3 skeins of yarn. And so I went on the Lily and Pine website to look at their colors and to see if there was another colorway that would kind of blend in with this fade. And sure enough, there was a colorway called Sandy's Beach, which doesn't have speckles, but is a tonal kind of creamy color. And they work together. So, of course, you can't just buy 1 skein of yarn. It's not worth the shipping. So, back up to La Violette. one of the yarns that I saw they had was this skein of Lang Super Soxx. And I had not that long ago seen this yarn be knit up on the Crazy Sock Lady podcast, and I had looked for it. She said she had a lot of interest in it, and it didn't seem to be available anywhere. And I had found it somewhere in Canada, but there was nothing else I really wanted to order with it. And so I thought, well, it's just a skein of sock yarn, you're just not going to own it. But when I saw this at La Violette, it was like, okay, well, that's the perfect excuse to buy this one. So it jumped in my cart. This is color 901.0345, and I think it's called Neon. It's the Lang Chemical Elements collection. And then coincidentally, Nancy from Knit Sip Happy is knitting up a pair of socks in this colorway too. Don't know if she bought it at La Violette, but I thought that was kind of funny, because it's the only other time I've seen it is on the Crazy Sock Lady podcast. So now I have a skein of my own, because it's very cool. It looks very cool when it's knit up. I don't know if you can tell from there. And then I also got this skein of Flotte Socke, and it's the Christmas metallic. I had seen this one, the non-metallic, at Beehive Yarns in Beehive Wool Shop in Victoria, and almost bought it and didn't. But then the sparkles, it's just like, okay, I gotta get that. So they were packaged beautifully with this purple tissue paper, and then also got a lovely stitch marker. So La Violette Yarn and Gift Co. Can definitely recommend ordering from them. Great service and beautiful product. All right, so back to Lillian Pine. So when I ordered my Sandy's Beach to go with my gold fade set, I picked up some more yarn. So I had actually been on that website a little while. I'd gone on a couple times before I kind of pulled the trigger on this. And there were a couple of colorways that I liked, but they weren't in stock. And then when I finally went back to actually buy the yarn, these two colors were back in stock. So this is also the Daylily Sock, and this is called London Fog, and this is called Earl Grey. And I thought those looked very nice together. Also, maybe for a shawl, or maybe sock with heels and toes and vice versa, not sure. I could see this for a Helen Stewart pattern because she often uses yarns of this kind of soft colors and such. What was I gonna say? Oh, I thought even this yarn didn't go too badly with the fade set, but I thought these two were too similar. So I decided against that. At least I think I've decided against it. I think they're similar, but they're different, but they're too similar. So I think I'll stick with this one to go with that. Oh, I should tell you the color names for these. This one in the fade, this is Dulce de Leche. This is, second one is Creme Caramel. And then the third one is Toffee. Oh, I can't wait to make that. But wait, there's more. So I also ordered this sock set called Wild Rose, also in the Daylily sock. And this is what I am going to use for my new pair of Tits Up. I think it'll show off the pattern much, much better. And it's such a beautiful yarn combo. So stay tuned for that. Not sure when I'll be casting them on, but I think that'll be perfect for that pattern. So yes, lots and lots of lily and pine yarn. I've never owned any before. Now I have a whole collection. But it's beautiful. It's just, I love the dyeing technique. Just these soft colors with the speckles. I just think they're just beautiful. I'm not sure how that dyer was not on my radar before. Oh, and then, so our youngest son just came back from a trip to Ireland, and we were talking about, you know, what was he gonna do and all that, and I said, I know what I would do if I was in Ireland. I'd be checking out all the Irish wool. So that stuck in his head. He may have bought this for me anyway because he knows I love my yarn, but he brought me back this skein of yarn. So this is from Natural Wool Ireland, and I'll put the link to their excuse me, I'll put a link to their website below. They have it on their band, but it's actually incorrect. They have .com, but it's actually IE. Anyway, this is 100% Romney wool. There's 240 meters in 100 grams. And this is the sky blue colorway. I discovered that on the website because it's not written on the label anywhere. Now the only thing is, this is quite a rustic yarn. And I don't know what sort of garment or accessory I could make from it that I would be able to wear next to my skin. So I am thinking about potentially weaving with this and making some placemats or some hot pot mats or something like that with this yarn and something else. So that's what I'm considering, because it's beautiful wool. It's just not soft enough for me to wear. I don't do well with really rustic yarns. So that is quite a lot of yarn that has come into my life since we last spoke, but I'm very excited about knitting with it. Or weaving, as the case may be. That's something, you know, at the beginning of this year, I was talking about doing some weaving and doing some cross stitch, and I've not done any of it. I kept meaning to pull out my cross stitch last week, and I just never did. The days, just the way they unfolded, it was just never the right time. I need some really good light for it. And yeah, it just didn't happen. We'd end up with company, or we'd end up sitting outside. It's not really something I could do easily outside because it would be breezy and probably blow things around, like the pattern and stuff. So I do definitely want to get back to some cross stitch. But let's kind of reel it back. So life, what's been happening since we last spoke? So a week and a half ago, my husband went in for some surgery, and it all went as planned. He had to stay overnight in the hospital, and then he came home and spent the rest of the week recuperating. He went back to work on Tuesday. He's doing fine with work. He's got some restrictions, but he's managing so far okay. But he had a very nice, relaxing week off. I think he read 5 or 6 books I did a lot of reading also, and a lot of knitting. We spent a lot of time sitting outside. The weather was in the mid-20s Celsius, which would be like, say, high 70s, low 80s. And usually almost every afternoon, there'd be a breeze that would pick up, just blow through the yard. And towards the end of the week, we started taking our chairs out from under the deck and then taking them out to the shady part on the grass that would catch the breeze better. We do have an overhead fan under our deck, so if we turn that on, that adds, you know, some artificial breeze, and it does help keep things cooler. But just being out in the actual breeze and in the shade was really nice too. Let me think what else. We saw family. Well, did I mention the beginning about Canada Day and Independence Day? Because of course those took place the last week. I restarted this episode so many times, I've lost track of exactly what I said at the beginning. But anyway, we did have a very quiet Canada Day. We didn't go anywhere, didn't really do anything. We saw all of our kids at some point over the week, came for some visits. And then the last day, the Monday before Cameron went back to work, we just had the nicest day. So he's been rereading a series of books, and he couldn't find the next one in his in the books he had. Now, we when we did our kitchen renovation, we ended up downsizing to only one bookshelf in our living room, with plans to get a new set of bookshelves for the office. And so right now, a bunch of his books are all packed in cardboard boxes. So he went through the boxes, he went through his Kindle, he just couldn't find this title. So he said he was gonna go run down to the secondhand bookstore. So I said, oh, just wait, I'll come with you. Because I'd been in there not long ago, but there was an author I meant to look for and had forgotten. So it was kind of late morning by this point, I guess mid-morning. So we went down to the bookstore, he found the book he wanted, we browsed a little bit, and I said we should go find a coffee shop and sit there and have a cup of tea and a little something and just read our books. So that's what we did. I don't think we've ever done that in our lives, but our downtown has been kind of all refurbished over the last few years, and it's really become a nice destination with there's a couple of craft breweries there, some coffee shops, restaurants, ice cream place, wine bar. Like, it's just really become a neat place to hang out. So we went to this coffee shop there, found just the perfect little corner outside with these 2 chairs and a little table between us, and sat and read our book for a while. And I said, while we're down here, we should go from here. Well, I was teasing and saying, well, we should go from here to the brewery, which was like right next to us, for lunch. But then we actually did end up going to a different restaurant down there for lunch, having a glass of wine and lunch. And then we saw some people walk by with ice cream, and I'm like, before we go home, we've got to find out where the ice cream is and grab some ice cream too. So that's what we did. So it was kind of mid-afternoon, I guess, by the time we got home. We camped out in the backyard, and then our daughter-in-law contacted me to see if I was home and could help her with a knitting thing. And so our son and her ended up coming over and having a visit with us, having happy hour with us that afternoon. And it was just yeah, just a lovely end to the week off that we had spent together. Unfortunately, Cameron had to go back to work on Tuesday. I think he would have been happy to stay home. But like I say, he is managing fine at work. He just has to be careful not to do too much. And that's hard for him because he's a doer. He's a goer, he's a doer. And have to really watch. He said I think it was yesterday, he went to lift something and he's like, oh yeah, I'm not allowed to lift that, and kind of kicked it along the floor. So I know it's cramping his style a little bit, but the easier he takes it now, the faster he'll recover. I'm just gonna look at my notes, see if I've missed anything. I don't think so. So, time for something good. One of the things that I've been reading lately, pardon me, are my Agatha Christie books. So if you've been with me since the beginning, which was the beginning of 2016, or 2017, I should say, pardon me. Yeah, I started this podcast in January of 2017. Back in the fall of 2016, I decided to read my entire Agatha Christie collection from beginning to end, starting with the first year of publication and working my way through. I had recently acquired the last Agatha Christie book that I didn't own and decided that I would do that. And I was pretty sure I've read, if not all, almost all of those books before, but never sort of took them in order. The vast majority of them were secondhand copies that I'd picked up from secondhand bookstores or been given or got at other book sales. So just over the years, I've been collecting them. We even had a knit-along, an Agatha Christie knit-along back in 2017 in conjunction with this. And I think in my mind, I thought it might take me a few months or maybe a year to read all of my Agatha Christie books. Well, I just finished the last one very, very recently, since we last recorded. Now, granted, I did not read them straight through. Obviously, if I picked up one, read it through, put it down, picked up another, and just read them consecutively without reading anything else, maybe I could have done that. But I could only read so many in a row, and then I needed a break, and then sometimes it took me months to go back to them. So it was interesting because I read all the Agatha Christie mysteries, and then the last three were adaptations. They were novels based on Agatha Christie plays written by a gentleman called Charles Osborne. So in many cases, it was Agatha Christie's words, the dialogue and etc. But these plays were just written as though they were novels. So that was interesting. I had read all of those before, and I think he did a very good job with them. And then I had a couple of other books that were not exactly Agatha Christie mysteries. So one of them, this is actually the last book that I read, although it's the last mystery. This is called The Floating Admiral. And you can see Agatha Christie's name, but you can also see some other authors. This is such an interesting way that they wrote this book, a very interesting concept for this book. So there is this detection club that I guess different mystery authors belonged to. No idea if it's still in existence. And they would meet and discuss things and I think, help each other out. They decided to write a mystery together. And so somebody began it and then passed off the next chapter to someone else who would read what had been written so far, write the next chapter, pass it along. And so they had certain rules that the clues that were there had to lead somewhere. They also had to be able, with their chapter, to explain where it was going and have a conclusion. They couldn't just write and make up all this crazy stuff. They had to make it make sense for their solution. Super interesting. So you follow this whole story through, and you read the end, and then they also, at the end, include everyone else's solutions as they anticipated them. So yeah, super interesting way to write and read a mystery novel. So that was the last mystery I read. Now, Agatha Christie wrote, I think it's 6 or 8 books under the name of Mary Westmacott. They're not mysteries. This is the only one that I've acquired. I was looking online today and they're very hard to get your hands on. Copies are very expensive if you find it. If you find one or more, but I read this one, and it's a totally different style, and it definitely kept me reading. It caught my interest, kept me reading to the end. But yeah, just a very different style than her mysteries. And then also this one. This is a nonfiction book, and her husband was an archaeologist, and they spent some time in, I think it was Syria, and while he was on his digs. And so this book is just about her experiences during those times. And yeah, also very interesting. Again, a different voice, different style, but equally enjoyable. So all I have left on my shelf is, well, I have is it an anthology? I have a book that lists all of the Agatha Christie novels and a little brief synopsis of what they're about. I've never really looked at it, I'll be honest. I also have this, the new bedside bathtub and armchair companion to Agatha Christie, which if I think about it, I should have probably been reading as I went, because they do also list a lot of the book titles and give a little synopsis, but then I noticed they also have just some different articles and things. So I think I'll probably give that a look through also, just to maybe I'll learn something. And then I also have this biography, which I have not read. So I thought that might be a fitting thing to do now that I've read all of the books on my bookshelf, that maybe I should learn a little bit more about her as a person. This gave me a little glimpse of it, but there's more to it. And apparently Charles Osborne, who wrote those 3 novels based on her plays, apparently he has also written a biography of her, so I might try and track that down. We'll see. But yeah, I've made my way through all of my Agatha Christie books. It only took me, let's see, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 6.5 years, almost 7 years. Definitely not what I expected when I started out. All right, that's it for this week. That's enough, I think, right? That's one thing, when you skip a week of recording, things seem to pile up. I hope you're all enjoying your summer if you are in the northern hemisphere, and obviously if you are in the southern hemisphere, you're beginning winter. So I hope you're enjoying the cooler weather that lends itself so well to knitting and crocheting and all those woolly crafts. As far as I know, I will be recording again next week. I am doing some childcare off and on this summer for my youngest granddaughter. I actually had her here on Wednesday, so that might determine the times when I record, but I am going to try and keep up with a weekly recording schedule. It just might not always be the same day every week. So thanks for watching so much. Thank you for all your kind comments and best wishes to Cameron. Really appreciate them. Yeah, take care of yourselves, and I will see you again very soon. Bye for now.